Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn facing a number of subpoenas this morning concerning his contacts with Russian officials. The House Intel Committee is preparing to issue one after the Senate Intel Committee issued two that target Flynn's businesses. Flynn has already invoked the Fifth Amendment in response to a previous subpoena attempt. Joining us now is Republican Senator James Lankford. He's on the Intelligence Committee. Senator, thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Allison.
Obviously, it is Flynn's prerogative to invoke the Fifth. That's all of our right as an American. How are you going to get information out of him?
The key thing is we need to have the information, period. So obviously it's his right, as you mentioned before, to be able to invoke the Fifth, to not do self-incrimination, but we have to be able to know the facts. So we're going to continue to reach out. We're going to continue to be able to work with him to get as much information as we possibly can. We've obviously subpoenaed business records for him. Businesses are not protected by a Fifth Amendment. Individuals are. So we're going to continue to gather as much information as we can to be able to get to the facts.
What if he doesn't turn over those business records?
Well, we'll keep pushing, quite frankly. We're going to continue to be able to work through the process. We've worked with our attorneys to be able to determine what are the parameters of where we can go, and we're going to try to use every tool that we can to be able to get to the facts. This is one part of the investigation.
But is it your impression that all investigative threads lead through Michael Flynn?
No, not all, by any means. This is a thread. This is a part of the investigation. It's an important part of the investigation. We've done quite a few interviews around this issue. We'll continue to do more after this, but we want to get a chance to sit down with him as well, hear his side of the story, and be able to get the facts.
Is there any irony to you that Michael Flynn and Donald Trump, then candidate Trump, really condemned people who took the Fifth? During the campaign, they said that basically spelled guilt when they were referring to anybody who wanted to exercise that right as connected to Hillary Clinton's emails.
Right. It is ironic. Obviously, we had about, I don't remember the number now, 9 or 10 individuals during the Obama administration. There were Obama administration officials that took the Fifth Amendment. Obviously, none of those were compelled to be able to push beyond their testimony. They were brought before Congress, pled the Fifth. We moved on from there to be able to gather other information. Again, as you mentioned before, it's an American's right to be able to do that, but it's our responsibility to still get to the bottom of the facts.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions, let's talk about him. He did not disclose some of his meetings with Russians on his security clearance forms. Are you concerned?
No, I'm only concerned based on what those meetings might have been. Again, as a member of the Senate right now, for me, I would tell you I interact with a lot of people from around the world. And trying to get on a list of everyone I've ever met with on any issue, especially if it's an issue where you bump into someone at a meeting or there's a meeting where there's a lot of people there. I want to know what those meetings were. That's entirely reasonable to be able to get before I would pass any judgment about whether there was an issue here.
Well, I mean, how are you going to get to that? Because what he is saying, what Jeff Sessions' office is saying, is that there were so many casual encounters like those that you're describing that, you know, he couldn't basically fit it on the form and didn't think that those needed to be disclosed. How are you going to separate those?
Ultimately, I'm not going to try to pick apart every single one of them because there are a lot of casual meetings when you're in the Senate. You meet a lot of people, you interact with a lot of folks at a lot of different events that are out there representing the United States, and they're representing their country. So we want to be able to ask them the basic question, clear up the record. We'll get a chance to get a clear record. We'll go from there.
Let's talk about the situation with Britain now and Israel. Both of these countries, the U.S.'s two closest allies, at the moment are angry with the U.S. because of intelligence leaks. In fact, so much so that Britain says that they're not going to share intel about the Manchester terrorist attack with the United States. Where does this leave us?
I would actually disagree with the premise on that, Allison, because I know from statements made by Israel that they're not necessarily angry with it, and the British have already engaged to be able to do intelligence sharing with us about Manchester.
But they say that something's changed. I mean, just to stop you, because the photographs of the crime scene and, in fact, some of the ingredients of the bomb were displayed, that, as I understand it, is what has upset British intel because they think that those have some hallmarks on it that they didn't want out in the public.
Well, I would only say they have been active to be able to share with us. We do engage. There are lots of times that allies will challenge each other on issues. This one I'm not concerned about. They're a very close ally. We do a lot of intelligence sharing together because we face a common threat and a common enemy, and it's incredibly important that we continue to cooperate together.
But are you saying that Israel is not angry that President Trump divulged highly classified information to the Russians in the Oval Office?
I would still say that we're cooperating very intensely with the Israelis on a common threat. So whether there is someone angry in the process, I'm sure there is someone somewhere angry. There always is, back and forth in the push and pull. But on the whole, the two entities, we continue to be able to cooperate together. As recently as just this week.
Does it concern you that President Trump shared classified information with the Russians in the Oval Office about ISIS?
Yeah, I try to be very, very careful with what I say and what I do. I would assume the president would do the same. The president, as any president would, as they're talking to a foreign leader, will occasionally be able to poke through some issues and say, this is important we talk about, and this is the reason why. I'll let the president make his own decisions, as I did for President Obama on some of those same issues. There were times when the Obama administration, there were public statements that were made that I also disagreed with, them releasing out classified information, some of the way they talked about it in the public media. We would have private conversations about that and then move on. I'll do the same with the Trump administration. It actually makes it a bigger issue to be able to continue raising the media than it was initially when it came out the first time.
So you plan to have a private conversation with the Trump administration about this?
That's how I have typically run issues like that. Yes, ma'am.
Senator Lankford, thanks so much for being on with us.
Thank you.
Chris.
All right, next up, insight from